Aaliyah Destiny never thought staying invisible would save her life, but in one night, it trapped her in a room no one walks out of unchanged. She was just the cleaner, overweight, quiet, paid $20 to wipe dust off books no one read. That's when she realized the truth. The man lying behind the glass monitors wasn't just sick, he was dying. And he wasn't just rich. Sung-woo was the most feared Mafia boss in Seoul, a man who ordered deaths with a nod, a man surrounded by guards who didn't look at her as human. And when he finally spoke to her, it wasn't a threat, it was worse. "Stay," he said. "No payment, no favors, just stay." Aaliyah didn't scream, she didn't run, she didn't ask why a dying predator wanted her. She stood there, holding her cleaning rag, realizing something terrifying. Whatever she chose next would follow her long after he was gone, and the world would never understand why she said yes. This isn't a story about love. It's about the one thing power can't buy, and the woman who gave it for free. Before the story continues, let me say this. If these stories comfort you, entertain you, or make you feel understood, please subscribe. It's free, but it means everything to this channel. Now, let's continue. The cleaning rag felt heavier than it should. Aaliyah stood 3 feet from the hospital bed, her polyester uniform clinging to her back with nervous sweat. The room hummed with machines, monitors tracking heartbeats, oxygen flowing through clear tubes, screens displaying numbers she didn't understand. Everything was chrome and white and cold, except for the man lying in the center of it all. Sung-woo. She'd heard his name whispered by the other cleaners, heard how the guards outside his door carried guns under their suits, heard that the woman who'd accidentally unplugged one of his monitors last month had disappeared from the cleaning rotation entirely. "You're still here," he said. His voice was softer than she expected, accented English, careful with each syllable, not the growl of a man who built an empire on fear. Aaliyah's fingers tightened on the rag. I'm not finished cleaning. The room is spotless." His eyes, dark, sunken, but still sharp, tracked her movement. "You've been cleaning the same bookshelf for 20 minutes. She had been. Because leaving meant walking past the guards, meant meeting their eyes, meant existing in a way that made her visible. And visibility, in her experience, only brought pain. "I can go," she said quietly. "I'm sorry if I don't." One word. Not a command exactly, but not a request either. Something in between, something that made her pause with her hand halfway to the door. Sung-woo shifted against his pillows, and even that small movement seemed to cost him. The machines beeped faster, his jaw tightened. "You don't look at me like they do," he said after a moment. Aaliyah blinked. "Like who?" "Everyone else." He gestured weakly toward the door, where shadows of guards moved beyond the frosted glass. "They look at me and see a dying king. They calculate how long I have left, what pieces of my empire they can claim. Or they look with pity, which is worse. How do I look at you? You look like I'm just a man." The words hung in the sterile air between them. Aaliyah wanted to deny it, wanted to say she knew exactly who he was, what he was, but she couldn't. Because when she looked at him, all she saw was someone in pain, someone alone despite being surrounded by people, someone like her. "Stay," he said again, and this time his voice carried something desperate beneath the control. "Please, just for tonight. I'll pay. You don't have to pay me." The words came out before she could stop them. Sung-woo's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe suspicion. Everyone wants payment. "I'm not everyone." Aaliyah pulled the plastic chair closer to his bed, the legs scraping against polished floor. She sat down slowly, her weight settling with a familiar heaviness. The chair held. It always did, though she always half expected it not to. "I don't understand," Sung-woo said, watching her with those sharp, dying eyes. "You know who I am? I know you're sick. I'm a criminal. I've hurt people. Many people. That's between you and them." Aaliyah folded her hands in her lap. "Right now, you're just someone who doesn't want to be alone. I understand that." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the rhythm of machines. Outside, Seoul glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a city that knew his name, feared his power, waited for news of his death like vultures circling. Inside this room, none of that mattered. "What's your name?" he asked finally. "Aaliyah. Aaliyah Destiny. Destiny." He repeated it slowly, tasting the syllables. "That's optimistic. My mother had hope. I'm still deciding if she was right." Sung-woo's laugh was more like a cough, but it reached his eyes. For just a moment, the hardness there softened into something almost human. "Will you tell me about her?" he asked. "Your mother?" And Aaliyah, who hadn't talked about her mother in 3 years, not since the funeral she had attended alone, not since she'd scattered ashes into the Han River because she couldn't afford to fly them home, found herself talking. She told him about Detroit, about a mother who worked 2 jobs and still found time to braid her hair, about the small apartment that always smelled like frying plantains and exhaustion, about dreams of college that died when the money ran out, about coming to Seoul because a Facebook ad promised good money for English tutors, about discovering the ad was a lie but being too broke to leave. Sung-woo listened without interrupting. He didn't offer sympathy or solutions. He just listened, his breathing shallow but steady, his eyes never leaving her face. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "My mother sold me when I was 8, he said finally. Aaliyah's breath caught. "Not permanently," he continued, his voice flat, emotionless. "She rented me to a factory, 12 hours a day, making shoes. She needed money for drugs." He paused. "I told myself I would never be powerless again. Everything I built, everyone I hurt, it all came from that promise." "Did it work?" asked Aaliyah softly. "Did you stop feeling powerless?" Sung-woo's expression cracked. Just for a second, just enough for her to see the 8-year-old boy still trapped beneath the Mafia boss exterior. No, it never worked. The night stretched on. Aaliyah didn't leave. The guards changed shifts outside. She heard their low voices, the click of weapons being checked. Someone knocked once, asking if he needed anything. Sung-woo sent them away without looking. "Tell me about the worst night of your life," he said around 2 a.m., when the machine seemed louder in the darkness. Aaliyah wanted to deflect, to ask why he wanted to know, to remind him she was just the cleaning lady. But there was something in his face, not curiosity, not manipulation, just the raw need of someone running out of time to understand anything real. So she told him about the night in Detroit when she was 16 and 3 boys from school followed her home, about how they called her names, fat bitch, ugly black cow, while she walked faster, trying to pretend she couldn't hear them, about how they threw a bottle that shattered near her feet, about how she'd run, how her lungs burned and her legs ached, and she hated her body for being too heavy to escape faster, about hiding in a doorway until sunrise, too afraid to go home, too ashamed to call for help. "I wanted to disappear," she said, her voice steady despite the memory. "I wanted to be invisible so badly that I made myself invisible. I stopped speaking up in class, stopped making friends, stopped existing in any way that made me noticeable. And it worked. I became so invisible that people looked right through me." "Until tonight," Sung-woo said. "Until tonight," she agreed. He reached out then, a slow, painful movement, and took her hand. His fingers were cold, trembling slightly. She didn't pull away. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For seeing me. For letting me see you." If you're watching from somewhere in the world right now, drop a comment below and let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps us keep bringing you powerful stories like this one. Dawn came slowly to Seoul, painting the sky in shades of gray and gold. Aaliyah had dozed in the chair, her neck stiff, her body protesting the uncomfortable position. She woke to find Sung-woo watching her, his expression unreadable. "You stayed," he said, as if he'd expected her to vanish during the night. "I said I would." People say many things. They rarely mean them. A nurse came in, young, efficient, terrified. She checked his vitals without making eye contact, administered medication, and fled within minutes. Through it all, Sung-woo's hand remained loosely clasped in Aaliyah's, a connection neither of them acknowledged aloud. I have a brother, he said after the nurse left. Younger. He's probably in Shanghai right now, celebrating my death before it happens. You don't know that. I do, Sung-woo's voice carried certainty. I trained him to be ruthless. I taught him that family is just another word for competition. He learned well. Do you regret it? I regret many things. He paused, his breathing labored. But mostly, I regret that I'm dying in this sterile room, surrounded by people counting my money, and the only honest conversation I've had in 20 years is with a woman paid $20 to dust my books. I told you you don't have to pay me. I know. That's what makes you dangerous. Aaliyah frowned. Dangerous? You don't want anything from me. Money can't buy you. Threats can't control you. You're just here, being human. Do you know how terrifying that is to a man like me? She understood somehow. Understood that her ordinariness, her complete lack of agenda, stripped away all his defenses. She wasn't impressed by his power because she'd never seen it in action. She wasn't afraid because she'd already lived through worse. She was just a tired woman in a plastic chair holding the hand of a dying man, and that simplicity shattered everything he'd built his life around. Tell me what you're afraid of, she said. Dying alone, he answered immediately. Dying and having it mean nothing. Dying and knowing that the empire I built will crumble in weeks, that my name will be forgotten in months, that I wasted 52 years accumulating power that evaporates the moment my heart stops. Then don't let it be about power. What else is there? This, Aaliyah squeezed his hand gently. Right now, two people being honest with each other. That's real. That's something. Sung-woo's eyes glistened. He blinked rapidly, as if allergic to tears. Will you stay again, tonight? If you want me to. I do. His voice cracked slightly. I very much do. The days blurred together. Aaliyah came every evening after her morning cleaning shift. She stopped pretending to dust. She just sat in the chair beside him as bed, sometimes talking, often silent. The guards grew accustomed to her presence, though they never stopped looking at her like she was a puzzle they couldn't solve. A woman named Min So visited once, tall, elegant, expensively dressed. She spoke to Sung-woo in rapid Korean, her voice sharp with barely contained anger. He responded in the same language, his tone flat, final. Min So's eyes swept over Aaliyah with contempt before she stormed out. Ex-wife, Sung-woo explained after. She wanted to know why I changed my will. Aaliyah's stomach tightened. You changed your will? I left her nothing, left most of them nothing. He watched her carefully. Does that bother you? It's your money. It's blood money, built on suffering. He paused. I'm giving the majority to an orphanage in Busan, the one I grew up in, before my mother took me back. That's good. Is it? His laugh was bitter. Does it absolve anything? Can you buy redemption with dirty money? I don't know, Aaliyah said honestly. But it's better than leaving it to people who'll use it to hurt others. Practical answer. I'm a practical person. No, you're a good person pretending to be practical. There's a difference. On the 7th night, he asked about her dreams. I wanted to be a teacher, Aaliyah admitted. Elementary school. I loved children, loved the idea of shaping minds, helping kids believe in themselves. Why didn't you? Money, life, reality. She shrugged. The usual reasons dreams die. If you had unlimited resources, what would you do? Start a program for kids like I was, overweight kids, poor kids, invisible kids. Show them they matter. She smiled sadly. But I don't have unlimited resources. I have $20 a night and a work visa that expires in 4 months. Sung-woo was quiet for a long time. My lawyer will contact you next week, he said finally. Don't. Don't what? Don't try to give me money. Don't try to fix my life. That's not why I'm here. Then why are you here? Aaliyah met his eyes steadily. Because you asked me to stay. Because nobody should die alone. Because I'm tired of being invisible, and somehow, in this room, I'm not. Something shifted in Sung-woo's expression. Respect, maybe gratitude, maybe something deeper that neither of them could name. "You're extraordinary," he said softly. "I'm ordinary. That's the whole point. No, Aaliyah Destiny, you're the most extraordinary person I've ever met, and you don't even realize it." 2 weeks in, Sung Woo's condition worsened. The doctors spoke in hushed tones about organ failure, about days rather than weeks. They offered hospice care, morphine drips, the gentle euphemisms of impending death. Sung Woo refused it all. "I want to be awake," he told them. "I want to feel it." Aaliyah sat beside him through the bad nights, the ones where pain etched lines in his face, where his breathing came in gasps, where the machine screamed warnings that the nurses rushed to silence. "You don't have to do this," she told him during one particularly brutal night. "You don't have to suffer." "Yes, I do." His hand found hers, grip weak but determined. "I need to feel it, all of it. It's the only penance I have left." Penance for what? For everything. For the people I hurt, for the families I destroyed, for the boy I was who became the monster I am. "You're not a monster." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Aaliyah's voice was firm. "Monsters don't feel guilt. Monsters don't spend their last days trying to make amends. Monsters don't hold hands with the cleaning lady and tell her about their mothers." Sung Woo's face crumpled. For the first time since she'd known him, he cried, deep, wrenching sobs that shook his failing body. Aaliyah held his hand through it, her own eyes burning but refusing to spill tears. This wasn't her pain. This was his, and he needed to feel it. "I killed a man once. He stole from me. Not much, a few thousand won. His family was starving, so he took food from one of my warehouses." Sung Woo's voice was hollow. "I made an example of him. Had him beaten in front of his wife and daughter. He died 3 days later from internal bleeding." Aaliyah said nothing. What could she say? "His daughter would be your age now," he continued. "If she's even alive. I don't know. I never checked. I just moved on." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I need someone to know. I need someone to carry the truth of who I was, what I did. The world thinks I'm a king, a businessman, a powerful man, but you need to know that I'm just a murderer who got lucky." "I already knew," Aaliyah said quietly. "I'm not naive, Sung Woo. I know what you've done. I sit here anyway. Why? Because that man who died 20 years ago, that decision you made, that's not happening right now. Right now, you're just scared and in pain and trying to make what peace you can. And right now is all we have." He stared at her, tears still wet on his face. "How are you real?" he whispered. "I'm not special. I'm just here. That's what makes you special." The media started circling. Somehow word had leaked that Seoul's most notorious crime boss was dying, and journalists camped outside the building, their cameras ready to capture any glimpse of the powerful brought low. Sung Woo's organization responded with typical efficiency, tighter security, armed guards, threats of violence to anyone who got too close. But even they couldn't stop the speculation. The articles analyzing what his death would mean for the city's underworld, the think pieces about criminal empires and the men who built them. Through it all, Aaliyah slipped in and out unnoticed. She was too ordinary to merit attention, a large black woman in a cleaning uniform, invisible in her ordinariness. The guards knew her now, nodded her through without checking credentials. She'd become part of the landscape, a fixture of Sung Woo's dying days. "They're writing about you," Aaliyah mentioned one evening, gesturing towards her phone where headlines scrolled past, "calling you the ghost of Seoul, the Shadow King. There's a whole profile analyzing your influence." "What does it say?" "That you're responsible for 37% of the organized crime in the city, that you've laundered billions, that politicians and police are on your payroll." 37% is low," Sung Woo said with dark humor. "I'd estimate at least 50. Aaliyah set down her phone. "Does it feel worth it? All that money? All that power?" "No," the answer came without hesitation. "It feels like ash. Like I traded my humanity for numbers and accounts I'll never spend, for respect I'll never enjoy, for power that dies with me." "Then why did you do it?" "Because I didn't know there was another way to be." He looked at her. really looked at her, with eyes that had seen violence and caused it, that were now simply tired. People like you. People who can just exist without needing to dominate or control or win. You're incomprehensible to people like me. We see the world as a war zone. We fight because not fighting means dying. And now? Now, I'm dying anyway. And the only peace I've found is in the presence of someone who never fought at all. 3 days before the end, Sung-woo's brother arrived. Dae-jung was younger by 10 years, harder by comparison, dressed in a suit that cost more than Aaliyah made in a year. He swept into the room like he owned it, guards parting before him, and stopped short when he saw Aaliyah sitting beside the bed. He spoke in Korean, rapid and harsh. Sung-woo answered in English, his voice weak but steady. "She stays." "This is family business," Dae-jung snapped, switching to English. "Who is this woman?" "A friend." "You don't have friends. You have assets and liabilities." "Then she's an asset." Dae-jung's eyes narrowed, assessing Aaliyah like she was merchandise. "How much?" "Excuse me?" Aaliyah asked. "How much are you paying you?" Dae-jung pulled out a checkbook. "I'll double it to leave, triple it to forget whatever he's told you. I'm not paid to be here." "Everyone's paid. Name your price." "No." The single word seemed to stun him. Dae-jung looked at Sung-woo, then back to Aaliyah, confusion warring with suspicion. "What do you want? What's your angle?" "I don't have one." "Impossible." "Dae-jung," Sung-woo interrupted. His breathing labored from the stress. "Leave her alone. Say what you came to say." The brothers spoke then, switching back to Korean, their voices rising and falling in rhythms Aaliyah couldn't understand, but could feel. Anger, resentment, old wounds reopening. At one point, Dae-jung slammed his hand on the bedside table, making the monitors jump. A guard moved to intervene, but Sung-woo waved him back. Finally, Dae-jung straightened his jacket, his face a mask of cold fury. "You were a terrible brother," he said in English, clearly intending for Aaliyah to hear. "And you'll be an unmourned corpse." He left without looking back. The room settled into heavy silence. "I'm sorry," Aaliyah said after a moment. "Don't be. He's right." Sung-woo's eyes were closed, pain etched in every line of his face. "I was a terrible brother, a terrible son, a terrible man." "You're trying to be better." "Too late for that." It's never too late to be better. Even if you only have days left, you can still choose who you are in those days. Sung-woo opened his eyes, looking at her with something like wonder. "How do you have such faith?" "I don't know. Maybe my mother was right about my name." 2 days before the end, Sung-woo's breathing became ragged. The doctors increased his oxygen, adjusted his medications, spoke in the careful tones of professionals who knew they were losing. Aaliyah sat through it all, her hand steady in his, her presence the only constant in a room of changing machines and worried faces. "I'm scared," he admitted in the middle of the night, when only the two of them were awake. "I know. I don't know what comes next, if there's anything at all or just nothing. Neither do I. Does that frighten you?" "Sometimes," Aaliyah said honestly, "but then I think about my mother. About how she loved so fiercely even though life was hard, about how she faced death with this quiet dignity, like she was just moving to the next room. Maybe that's all it is, just moving to the next room." "I hope there's something," Sung-woo whispered. "I hope I get to apologize to everyone I hurt. I hope there's some way to make amends." "Then hope that. Hold on to it. Will you be here? At the end?" "Yes. Promise me." "I promise." He squeezed her hand with what little strength he had left. "Thank you, Aaliyah Destiny. Thank you for being human when no one else was." Before we continue to the final moments of this powerful story, take a second to subscribe to Love and Tension if you haven't already. We bring you deeply emotional stories that make you feel, make you think, and stay with you long after they end. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. The end came on a Tuesday afternoon. Aaliyah had been sitting with Sung-woo for 6 hours, watching his breathing slow, watching the monitors track his weakening heartbeat. The doctors had stopped coming as frequently. The guards stood silent outside, waiting. At 3:47 p.m., Sung-woo opened his eyes one last time. "Aaliyah," he said, her name barely a whisper. "I'm here. Stay with me. I'm not going anywhere." He smiled, a real smile, genuine and unguarded. For just a moment she saw not the mafia boss, not the powerful man, but just a man who'd been lost his whole life and found, in the very end, a moment of peace. "It's okay," she told him softly, sensing what was coming. "You can let go now. It's okay to rest." Sungwoo's eyes focused on her face, memorizing it maybe, or just drawing comfort from it. His grip on her hand loosened. "Thank you," he breathed. And then he was gone. The monitors flatlined with that terrible sustained tone. Aaliyah sat perfectly still, her hand still wrapped around his. Tears finally spilling down her cheeks, not for the mafia boss, not for the powerful man, but for the scared boy who never got to be anything else. The door burst open. Doctors rushed in, checked vitals, pronounced what everyone already knew. Dae-jung appeared, his face carefully blank. Min-so stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable. Through it all, Aaliyah stayed seated, stayed holding Sungwoo's hand, stayed present even as death settled into the room. A guard touched her shoulder gently. "Miss, you need to leave now." She nodded, carefully releasing Sungwoo's hand, straightening his blanket one last time. She stood slowly, her body stiff from hours of sitting, and turned to leave. "Wait," Dae-jung said. She paused. "What did he tell you?" he demanded. "About his assets, his accounts, his operations?" "He told me about his mother and his brother and his regrets." "That's all?" "That's all that mattered." Dae-jung stepped closer, his voice dropping. "There will be compensation for your time, for your discretion." "I don't want compensation. Everyone wants something." "I wanted to make sure he didn't die alone," Aaliyah said simply. "That's done now." She walked past him, past the guards, past Min-so's calculating stare, and out into the hallway. Behind her, she heard raised voices beginning to argue about assets and control, and all the things that mattered to everyone except the man who'd just died. Aaliyah didn't look back. The news broke within the hour. Seoul crime boss Sungwoo dead at 52. Shadow King's empire in question after sudden death. Power vacuum expected in wake of notorious criminals passing. Aaliyah watched the headline scroll past on her phone as she rode the bus back to her tiny apartment in Itaewon. Reporters speculated, experts analyzed, politicians made careful statements. Not one of them mentioned that he'd died holding someone's hand. Not one of them mentioned that he'd cried. Not one of them mentioned that he'd been, in the end, just a scared man seeking forgiveness. Her phone rang 3 times that evening. Unknown numbers. She didn't answer. The next day, a man in an expensive suit appeared at her cleaning service. "Miss Aaliyah Destiny?" "Yes." "I'm Attorney Park, executor of Mr. Kim Sung-woo's estate. He left specific instructions regarding you." Aaliyah's stomach tightened. "I don't want anything from his estate." Nevertheless, he was quite clear. Attorney Park opened a briefcase, pulling out documents. "He's established a trust in your name, 500 million won, to be used for educational programs for at-risk youth. You're named as the director with full control over the funds." "No." "I'm sorry?" "No, I can't accept that." Attorney Park's eyebrows rose. "Miss Destiny, this is a substantial sum, life-changing money. You could—" "I know what I could do with it." Aaliyah's voice was firm. "But I didn't sit with him for money. I sat with him because he was alone. If I take that money, it changes what it was. It makes it transactional. And it wasn't." He anticipated you might say that. Attorney Park pulled out another document. "He wrote you a letter. He asked that you read it before making your final decision." He handed her an envelope, thick paper, her name written in shaky handwriting. "I'll give you time to consider," Park said, "but please read the letter. That's all I ask." He left his card and departed. Aaliyah held the envelope for a long time before opening it. "Dear Aaliyah, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. And if I know you, and I believe I do, you've just refused the trust I set up for you. You're probably telling my lawyer that you didn't sit with me for money, that accepting it would taint what we had, that you want nothing from my estate. You're right and you're wrong. You're right that what we had was real. Your presence in my final days was the purest thing in my life. No agenda, no manipulation, just human kindness given freely. I will take that gift with me into whatever comes next. But you're wrong to refuse the trust. That money isn't payment for your time. It's not a transaction. It's simply the last act of a dying man who finally understood what matters. You told me about your dream, helping kids like you were, invisible kids who need someone to show them they matter. Let me help you do that. Not because I'm buying your memories of me, not because I'm trying to purchase forgiveness, but because in my last days you gave me the greatest gift anyone ever has. You treated me like a human being. You sat with me when you had every reason to leave. You held my hand when I was terrified. You told me it was okay to let go. Let me give something back, not to you, but through you. Let me take some of the blood money I accumulated and turn it into something good. Let me help those children you wanted to help. Let my last act in this world be enabling your dream instead of someone else's nightmare. Please, Aaliyah, don't refuse because you think it compromises the purity of what we had. Refuse only if you truly don't want to help those children. But if you do want to help them, then let this money be transformed from something earned through suffering into something that prevents it. You told me it's never too late to be better. Even in my last days, I could still choose who I was. Let me choose this. Let me choose to help you help others. Let my last choice be something good. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for staying. Thank you for showing me at the very end what it means to be human. With gratitude and respect. Sung Woo. Aaliyah read the letter 3 times, sitting on her narrow bed in her tiny apartment, tears streaming down her face. She thought about the children she'd wanted to help. The invisible ones, the overlooked ones, the ones who believed they didn't matter. She thought about what 500 million won could do, after-school programs, scholarships, mentorship, support. She thought about Sung Woo's face in those final moments, the peace he'd found, the fear that had finally released him, and she made her decision. Attorney Park looked surprised when she called the next day. I'll accept the trust, under 3 conditions. Which are? 1. My name doesn't appear anywhere public. The program won't be named after me or him. It will just exist. Agreed. 2. Every decision about the money goes through an independent board. I want teachers, social workers, people who know what these kids need, not me alone. Reasonable. 3. If any media outlet tries to make this into a story about me and Sung Woo, a romance, a redemption arc, anything, the trust dissolves and the money goes to the orphanage in Busan he already designated. Attorney Park was quiet for a moment. You really don't want the attention. I never did, and I won't start now. The offers came anyway. Within a week of Sung Woo's death, the vultures descended. First was a woman from a major Korean news network catching Aaliyah outside her apartment building. Miss Destiny, our viewers are fascinated by your connection to Kim Sung Woo. We'd like to offer you an exclusive interview, 5 million won for 1 hour of your time. No thank you, Aaliyah said, moving past her toward the bus stop. 10 million. We'll send a car, make your makeup, make you look beautiful. Aaliyah stopped walking, turned slowly. I said no. The reporter's smile faltered at something in Aaliyah's eyes. Not anger, just exhaustion. The bone-deep weariness of someone who'd given all she had to give and had nothing left for spectacle. But the world wants to know. The world doesn't need to know everything, Aaliyah said quietly. Some things are private. Some things are sacred. He's dead. Let him rest. She walked away, leaving the reporter standing on the sidewalk, camera crew exchanging uncertain glances. A publisher approached her at the cleaning service. We'll ghostwrite it for you, the man said, his suit impeccable, his smile practiced. You just need to approve the manuscript. We're thinking Love in the Shadows, the cleaning lady who tamed Seoul's most feared criminal. 20 million won advance plus royalties. It'll be a bestseller. Alia continued sorting her cleaning supplies, not looking up. It wasn't love, she said. Well, we can call it whatever you want. It was companionship. It was humanity. It was two lonely people finding each other at the end of one person's life. She finally met his eyes. And it's not for sale. Everything's for sale at the right price. No, Alia said softly. It's not. The publisher tried 4 more times over the next 2 weeks, each time increasing the offer. 50 million won, 100 million. Name your price, Miss Destiny, whatever you want. Alia never responded to any message after the first refusal. Dae-jung came himself on a rainy Thursday evening. He found her at a small convenience store near her apartment, buying instant ramen and milk. When she emerged, he was leaning against a black Mercedes, 3 bodyguards hovering nearby. Miss Destiny, he said, his English crisp, we need to talk. I don't think we do. My brother left you a considerable trust. Some in my organization are concerned about what you might know, what you might share. Alia stopped walking, rain beginning to dampen her hair. I'm not sharing anything. I'm not talking to reporters, not writing books, not giving interviews. I'm just living my life. And the trust? I'm using it exactly as he wanted, helping kids, nothing more. My organization needs guarantees. We need assurances that you won't suddenly change your mind, won't become a liability. I'm not interested in your organization. I never was. Alia shifted her grocery bag to her other hip. Your brother asked me to stay with him while he died. I did. That's finished now. I don't want your money, your threats, or your attention. I just want to be left alone. Dae-jung studied her for a long moment, rain streaking down his face. You really mean that? He said, something like wonder in his voice. Yes, he was right about you. Dae-jung's expression softened almost imperceptibly. He said you were the only real thing in a world of performances. I didn't understand what he meant until now. Can I go home? Alia asked, tired of standing in the rain. One last thing. Dae-jung pulled an envelope from his jacket, protected from the rain by plastic. This was in his personal safe. He left instructions that if you accepted the trust, I was to give you this. If you refused it, I was to burn it. He handed her the envelope and walked away without another word, his bodyguards falling into step behind him. The Mercedes pulled away, leaving Alia alone on the wet sidewalk. She waited until she was home to open the second letter. Alia, if you're reading this, you accepted the trust. Thank you. Thank you for letting me do one good thing, for letting my last act be helping instead of hurting. There's something else I need to tell you. Something I couldn't say when I was alive because I was too much of a coward. Those last days with you were the only time in my adult life I felt truly seen. Not as the Shadow King, not as Sang-woo the criminal, not as the man with power and money and blood on his hands, just as a person. You gave me that gift without knowing how rare it was, how precious. You sat with me not because of what I could give you or what I could do to you, but because you recognized suffering and chose to ease it. I'm not fool enough to call it love. I don't know what love is. I've never experienced it, never given it, never believed in it. But I think what you gave me was something even more fundamental. You gave me humanity. You reminded me I was human, even at the very end when I'd forgotten how to be. The world will try to make our story into something it wasn't. They'll say it was romance or redemption or some kind of fairy tale. They'll offer you money and fame and all the things they think matter. Please say no. Not because I'm asking you to protect my reputation, I have none worth protecting, but because what we had was real precisely because it existed outside all of that. It was pure because it was private. It mattered because it was simple. You sat with a dying man. You held his hand. You told him it was okay to let go. That's all it was, and that's everything it needed to be. Don't let them cheapen it. Don't let them turn it into entertainment. Keep it sacred by keeping it silent. And please, please use that trust to help those children. Let something good come from my life. Let my last breath be the beginning of someone else's hope. You told me it's never too late to be better. Because of you, I died believing that. Let me prove it by what I left behind. You are extraordinary, Alia Destiny. Not because of anything you did, but because of who you are. Don't let the world convince you otherwise. With eternal gratitude, Sang-woo. P.S. If anyone ever asks you what I was like in those last days, tell them the truth. I was scared, I was human, and I was grateful. Nothing more, nothing less. Alia folded the letter carefully and placed it in the small box where she kept her mother's ashes, paperwork, and a single photo from her childhood. Then she lay down on her narrow bed and let herself cry, for Sang-woo, for her mother, for the girl she'd been who believed she had to be invisible to survive, for the woman she was becoming who was learning that visibility wasn't always dangerous. The media frenzy lasted 3 weeks. Security footage leaked online, not from inside Sang-woo's room, but from the hallways, blurry images of Alia entering and leaving, always alone, always quiet. The timestamp showed her visits, every evening for 14 days, staying for hours, leaving near dawn. The internet exploded with speculation. She must have been his secret lover. She's probably carrying his child. She's going to inherit everything. She's working with his enemies. She's going to write a tell-all book. None of it was true. But truth didn't matter in the face of a good story. Journalists camped outside her apartment building. They called her workplace. They found her Facebook account from years ago, photos of her in Detroit, younger, smiling at some birthday party, and analyzed them like archaeological artifacts. Through it all, Alia said nothing. She went to work, she cleaned offices, she ate instant ramen alone in her apartment. She met with attorney Pak and the board he'd assembled for the trust, discussing after-school programs and scholarship criteria. She lived her life. You could make this stop, attorney Pak told her during one meeting. One press conference, one statement explaining what actually happened, and the speculation would end. Or it would get worse, Alia replied. They'd ask follow-up questions, want details, turn it into a narrative. No thank you. They're saying terrible things about you. Let them, Alia shrugged. I know the truth. The people who matter know the truth. Everyone else is just noise. Attorney Pak shook his head with something like admiration. You're possibly the most stubborn woman I've ever met. I prefer consistent.
Min-so tried next, appearing at Alia's workplace with an offer that made the cleaning service manager's eyes bulge. I'll give you 200 million won, the elegant woman said, her English perfect, her eyes cold. Right now, one bank transfer. All you have to do is sign a statement saying you and Sang-woo had an affair. Alia stopped mopping. Why would I do that? Because it's what the world already believes. You might as well profit from it. We didn't have an affair. Who cares? He's dead. I'm offering you enough money to change your life. Min-so's smile was sharp. You could go home to America, never clean another toilet, live comfortably forever. No, you're being foolish. That money from the trust, it'll run out. But this would be yours forever. I said no. Min-so's expression hardened. You think you're better than me? Better than all of us? You're just a fat cleaning lady who got lucky. You're nothing. Alia met her eyes steadily. Maybe I am nothing, but I'm not for sale. She returned to mopping, and after a long, tense moment, Min-so left, her heels clicking angrily against the floor. The documentary crew was the most persistent. They followed her for days, camera crew always 20 feet behind, capturing her mundane life like it was a thriller. Alia going to work. Alia buying groceries, Alia sitting alone on a bench in a park eating kimbap and watching children play. Finally, she turned to face them directly. I'm not going to talk to you, she said calmly, speaking to the camera for the first and only time. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. What happened between me and Sang-woo was private. It was human, and it's staying that way. But the public has a right to know. No, they don't. Alia's voice was firm but not angry. They want to know. That's different. And my privacy is worth more than their curiosity. We could pay you. I don't want your money. I don't want your attention. I don't want to be part of your story." She paused. He was a person, not a character, not a villain, not a redemption arc. Just a person who was dying and didn't want to die alone. That's all you need to know. She turned and walked away. The documentary aired 3 months later without her participation. They used the hallway footage, interviewed people who'd never met Sung-woo, speculated wildly about motivations and meanings. The director called it "The Woman in the Shadows, Seoul's Greatest Mystery." Alia never watched it. 6 months after Sung-woo's death, the program launched. Haven Spaces operated out of 3 community centers in Seoul's poorest neighborhoods. No name attached, no donor credited, just simple flyers in Korean and English announcing free tutoring, hot meals, and a safe place for kids who needed one. Alia visited the centers weekly, not as a director or founder, but as a volunteer. She helped with homework, taught English basics, and mostly just listened. She saw herself in these children, the quiet ones, the ones who tried to be invisible, the ones who believed they didn't matter. "You matter," she told a 12-year-old girl one afternoon, a heavy girl who reminded Alia painfully of her younger self. "I know it doesn't feel like it. I know you think if you could just disappear, life would be easier, but you matter. And someday you'll meet someone who helps you remember that." The girl looked up with tears in her eyes. "You really think so?" "I know so." The first anniversary of Sung-woo's death came and went. The media did retrospectives, analyzing his impact, his crimes, his mysterious final days. Some journalists tried one more time to contact Alia. She ignored them all. Instead, she spent that day at the Han River, the same place she'd scattered her mother's ashes years before. She brought flowers, simple chrysanthemums, and sat on the bank, watching the water flow. "I kept my promise," she said quietly, speaking to the memory of a dying man. "I stayed, and I'm using the money the way you wanted. Those kids, some of them are going to make it because of you, because of what you left behind." The water rippled, carrying her words away. "I hope you found peace. I hope wherever you are, you're not the Shadow King anymore. I hope you're just Sung-woo, and I hope that's enough." She sat there for an hour, then stood, dusted off her pants, and walked back to her ordinary life. 2 years later, a journalist finally tracked down the full story. She was young, persistent, and genuinely curious rather than sensational. She had spent months researching, interviewing dozens of people, piecing together fragments. She approached Alia at a Haven Spaces center, notepad in hand, recorder off. "I'm not here for an exposé. I just want to understand. Everyone talks about how you refused everything. Money, fame, opportunities. Why?" Alia considered not answering, but there was something honest in the woman's face, something genuinely seeking understanding rather than spectacle. "Because it wasn't about any of that," she said simply. "He was dying. He was alone. He asked me to stay, so I did. But he was a criminal. He hurt people. Doesn't that matter? Of course it matters. But it didn't change the fact that he was human, that he was scared, that everyone deserves companionship at the end, no matter what they've done. So you forgave him? It wasn't my place to forgive or condemn him. I wasn't his judge. I was just there." The journalist scribbled notes, then looked up. "People call you a saint." Alia laughed, genuinely amused. "I'm not a saint. I'm tired, I'm ordinary, and most days I barely get by. I just did something that felt right in the moment. Why refuse all the money, though? The offers could have made you wealthy, because accepting them would have changed what it was. It would have made it transactional. It would have meant I stayed for payment instead of staying because someone needed another human being and I was willing to be that. You could have changed your life. I did change my life, just not in the way everyone thinks I should have." The journalist studied her for a long moment. "You know, the documentary portrayed you as either a gold digger or a saint, nothing in between." The world likes extremes, Alia said. It's easier to understand a villain or a hero than it is to understand someone who's just trying to be decent. Can I quote you on that? You can quote me on this. I'm not special. I'm not extraordinary. I'm just someone who believes that even people who've done terrible things deserve to die with dignity. That's all. The article published 3 weeks later. It was fair, thoughtful, and tried to capture the nuance of what actually happened. But even that careful piece couldn't escape headlines. The woman who said no to everything. Inside Alia Destiny's quiet rejection. People still didn't understand. They couldn't comprehend why someone would refuse money, fame, opportunities. They analyzed her psychology, her motives, her potential hidden agendas. Alia read the article once, appreciated its honesty, and then filed it away with Sung-woo's letters. 5 years after his death, Haven Spaces had expanded to 12 centers across Seoul. Thousands of children had passed through their doors. Many had gone on to university, to jobs, to futures they once thought impossible. None of them knew the money came from a mafia boss's guilt-cripped final act. None of them knew a black cleaning lady had sat with him while he died. They just knew someone cared enough to help. And that was exactly how Alia wanted it.
She never returned to America. Seoul had become home in a strange way, not because it welcomed her, not because she fit in, but because she'd found purpose here. She still cleaned offices some mornings, still lived in her small apartment, still rode the bus and ate instant ramen more often than she should. But now she also had the centers, the children, the quiet satisfaction of watching invisible kids discover they mattered. On particularly difficult days, when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, she would pull out Sung-woo's letters and read them again. Not all of them, just the final lines. You are extraordinary, Alia Destiny. Not because of anything you did, but because of who you are. Don't let the world convince you otherwise. And she would remember that staying had been worth it, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply remain present, that humanity matters more than headlines. Years later, a film student at Seoul National University would choose the story as her thesis project. She titled it The Veil. And it wasn't about romance or redemption. It was about two lonely people finding each other at the end of one life and the beginning of another's transformation. The student wanted Alia's participation, offered creative control, respectful portrayal, everything she could think of. Alia's response came in a simple email. Thank you for your interest, but I must decline. What happened between Sung-woo and me wasn't a story to be told. It was an experience to be lived. We lived it. That's enough. If you want to understand what happened, don't make a film about us. Instead, go sit with someone who's dying. Hold their hand. Listen to their fears. Be present without agenda. Then you'll understand everything you need to know. Best regards, Alia Destiny. The student published the email instead, and it went viral in a way nothing else about the story had, because finally people began to understand. Not the details, not the specifics, but the essence of what had happened in that sterile room over 14 nights. A woman who chose presence over profit, humanity over headlines, silence over spectacle. They understood that some things are too sacred to commodify, that some acts of kindness are diminished by recognition, that true power sometimes looks like a large black woman in a cleaning uniform, sitting quietly beside a dying man, asking for nothing, offering everything. Alia Destiny continued her ordinary life. She worked. She volunteered. She helped invisible children see themselves. And every year on the anniversary of Sung-woo's death, she returned to the Han River with flowers, sat on the bank, and whispered to the water, I kept my promise. You're at peace, and so am I. The world never fully understood why she said yes to staying and no to everything else. But Alia understood. And in the end, that's all that mattered. The end. This story isn't about love. It's about the one thing power can't buy: simple human presence, and the woman who gave it freely. It's about choosing dignity over dollars, silence over celebrity, humanity over headlines. In a world that screams for attention, Aaliyah Destiny whispered, and somehow that whisper changed everything.